about nervousness, guys. Let's get this straight. Sometimes I ask my students who believes he has above average feeling of nervousness, and then a lot of people will raise their hand, let's say 90%. So there are a lot of people who think that they have suffer more from nervousness than others. And isn't it strange that we work on developing a great PowerPoint and we train ourselves in presentation skills, but we don't train ourselves in decreasing the influence nervousness has when we stand here on the spot. Even, the second you woke up there on the stage, then this panic starts, but it happens so much inside and less visible from the outside. Therefore, we often believe that we are this difficult case. So what I would love to do is to explain how nervousness works in your body and mind, and then give suggestions how to decrease this influence nervousness has and to become a more confident speaker. So being at ease, that this place on the spot becomes also your comfort zone, and where we can be okay with what happens. I remember my presentation for my internship, and my internship was at a governmental organization, and I investigated the communication between managers and the commissioners, being municipalities, consultancy agencies. And I was looking at how they could improve and make their communication more clear. And my internship supervisor thought it was a great idea that I would present the results of my research at the annual conference. So you have to imagine a fancy location, all the managers, 50 or 60, sitting in this fancy room, all suited up, and me being there on a stage as a young student. And I wanted to start, and I just didn't know. It was shall I start with welcome, or my name is, or this presentation is about? I had a blackout. So it was silent for maybe 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, maybe 4. For me, it lasted endless. But for the managers, it was probably just a bit too long. What surprised me was that I had this blackout because I prepared very well and I rehearsed my presentation multiple times. But what also surprised me, how long afterwards I had this feeling that I ruined my presentation. I felt so embarrassed. And well, actually, after the blackout, I recovered and I just continued my presentation, and it went quite well. So what I learned from that is that this is just a very vulnerable spot. You're so visible, and if you make a mistake, everyone sees. And therefore, it is so nice if we can train ourselves to become just a more confident speaker and at ease with what happens. What happens in our body and mind when we get nervous? Our explanation starts with the brain. And the brain has the function to protect ourselves, and it takes it very seriously. Strangely enough, our brain doesn't make a difference between a physical threat, so let's say a truck coming towards us, and a psychological threat, so for example this in front of an audience. So when we feel threatened or when we feel under stress, then our stress button is pressed, our amygdala. And it is perfect because it's a mechanism of self-protection, and it's seen in a range of animals, but most of them don't have to give speeches. So what happens is it's a very automatic response. So also think that you cannot really control it because your stress hormones, they go up in a split second. And it results in your neocortex breaking down and a primal response of this fight or flight. And then of course we start sweating or trembling, all those reactions that we all recognize when we are nervous. So it's also good to remember that that is very normal. You can divide your brain into three parts. So reptilian brain, limbic brain, and neocortex. And your reptilian brain is where you react, where there's basic survival instinct, reflexes, so eating, sex, and breathing. Limbic brain is where I feel, so love and anger, bonding, human relationships, where we connect. And neocortex is where I think. So clear, analytical, rational. Neocortex, the part that we really need when presenting. Well, what happens under stress? Our blood supply goes to our reptilian brain. Therefore, we become less intelligent and more emotional, reactive. But there's nothing broken. That's just what happens, and it's designed into us over millennia. So we are wired to worry about our reputation. For example, when I teach in English, like now, I find it more difficult to come up with words. Like 5 minutes ago, we had to do the video 4 times over because I didn't come up with the right word. It's just more difficult when I feel slightly nervous. Well, if I'm in a pub with friends talking English, no problem. So what happens is that when I stand here and I feel more nervous, then my neocortex get less blood supply and therefore less blood supply to my English dictionary, and it's just more difficult. Do you recognize that? So now we discussed how nervousness influences our body and mind. And of course it raises the question, well, what can we do about it? So in our next video we will explain some tips that can help you to become a more confident speaker and at ease also with our stress. And maybe then we can find ways to use that energy, for example, for enthusiasm, so that it becomes good stress. So instead of wishing you good luck, we wish you good stress.